Hey everyone, this is Adam Smith from the Point Man team. I want to show you a quick walkthrough on a total and complete call in SWRemote. What you see in front of you when you first log in will be this screen. On this screen on the top left, you will see your job ID number. That number is automatically created and assigned to the call when the call is placed in SWR21. To the right of that, when you log in, you'll see the word notified. That means two things. Number one, the call exists, and number two, and more importantly, the call has been placed on your device. Therefore, you are notified. Top right, where you see my name, that is the head technician on this call. Moving down to the left, you're going to see your customer information, name, company, and address. You'll also see a little icon there for email and file. Now, ultimately, what we're going to do is push out the invoice as an email to the client when we're done with the call. This icon is letting me know that we have a legitimate email on file and we're otherwise good to go. However, if you do not see this email on file icon, don't worry. I'll show you how to update an email through the app as we move forward. Moving down from there, you'll see your job progress. Now, you're not going to see a lot of progress at this point as we're just logging in, but what you will initially see is when the call was scheduled and when it was pushed to your device. Moving over to the right, we have the call overview. You can see here I've set my call up as a service, and it is a no cool. Below that, if your office is using the call priority scale, which is a 1 through 5 scale in SWRe, you will see the appropriate number associated with your call. Lastly, as we move down, you'll see whether or not this call has been confirmed or not back in SWRe. Moving south to the very bottom now, you'll see job instructions. These are entered by a human being or the call taker when the client calls in to place a call. Below that, you'll see any phone number or numbers that you may need to get in contact with your client. Let's go ahead and open up our call. Now that we've opened our call, you'll see at the top of your screen the word dispatch will be underlined. This is your workflow. What we've done here with SWRemote is chopped up your workflow to make it nice and easy to walk through out in the field. However, before we get into actually working through each step, I want to take a moment to talk about the menu up in the top left of your screen. Opening our menu will give us a series of sub-tabs down the left side of our screen. The first of which at the top is called Assignment. The easiest way to explain this button is to basically state that it's your bookmark. Throughout the entirety of the call, if you walk away from your device, it goes to sleep on you, you jump into other apps. If you come back into SWRemote, hit your menu and the assignment button on the top here, it'll bring you right back to where you were with all of your progress saved. Below that, you'll see a button for instructions. Opening that up should bring us something that looks pretty familiar. This is that first screen that we initially logged into when we signed into SWRemote. Here you'll see your call overview. At this point, I like to refer to it as the cheat sheet. If you need to see your job instructions, see your progress to this point, or maybe even forgot your customer's name halfway through the call, this will be your quick lifesaver to get all that information on the fly. Also located in your menu will be a tab that says Customer. Selecting that will open us up into a treasure trove of information. I'm going to do it quickly, but from here you can also, if you'd like, hide your menu for a larger screen. Now that we're in our Customer tab, the first page that it automatically opens up to is called the Details page. This is the customer's profile back in SWR21 in the office. Up in the top left, you'll see the customer's name and if they're associated to a company. To the right, you'll see their location number. This is essentially the customer ID number back in SWR. Below that, you'll see it's a business. You'll see the type of property, whether it's single-family home, multifamily home, rental, business, etc. Moving down the left side of the screen, you'll see the address information, contact information, any physical directions to get to the location that may be on file. Do we have any contracts, agreements, or warranties with this client? If so, you'll get an overview here. Below that, you'll see an additional information section. I call this the potpourri section. It's basically anything else on file that doesn't nicely fit into any of the prior categories you'll see there. An example we see frequently is one I have here, the open job count with this client. You may also see things like initial lead source underneath the additional information section. Below that, you'll see a notes section. For any office folks who are watching this video, these notes are the location notes back in SWRe. Technicians, that's going to mean two things for you. Number one, the notes stick to the profile, so they don't necessarily just have to be notes about today's call. They can be notes about strategic things at the house, where to park, what equipment to bring. Another thing that's important here is these notes will not go to a customer. They will not show up on an invoice. They will not show up in an email. So if you need to put something that may not be pleasant, don't send to Adam, for example. You can put that here, and the customer will not see that. As we move down the screen, you may see an account section at the bottom. This is going to show up for two reasons. Number one on the left will be who is financially responsible for this account. If it's a property manager, a landlord, or an accounts payable contact, you'll be able to get permission halfway through a call to do something, or at the end of the call square up with payment by reaching their contact right here. On the other side of the page, you may see something that says payment information. This shows up if they have a balance or a deposit on their account. As we move forward today, I'll show you we can actually apply a balance or a deposit to the account with the press of a button. One last thing to notice before we move on is up in the top right of this screen, you do have the ability to edit this information as you see fit. One thing to keep in mind here is definitely make sure the information you're putting in is accurate. While still in our customer tab, if we move one to the right on the top of the screen, we'll get to our agreements. This is going to be a roster of current, expired, or terminated agreements that have been on file with this client. There is nothing to edit here. It is simply a reference of their agreement history, whether current or expired. What's nice here is you'll get an overview of the agreement on file. You're going to see the agreement number, the type of agreement, the discount percentage associated with that agreement, the active date range, so from when till when is this agreement valid. If there's any maintenance visits scheduled underneath an agreement, you'll see month and year when that next visit's coming up. And lastly, if there's any equipment covered under these agreements, you'll get a little overview of the equipment that is covered. Again, nothing to edit here, simply a reference of active, and as I scroll down, you see versus expired or terminated agreements. Moving one to the right on top of the screen, we'll see our equipment section. As you could probably guess, this will be the equipment on file for this client. Now what's nice here is yes, you can look at what you're maybe working on, but you can also add or update equipment from the field. In order to add a piece of equipment, so let's say we're at a customer's house for the first time, or we're doing a new install and we want to get that new piece of equipment on file, press the top right Add button. This will bring you to a little equipment screen where you can fill out basically a spreadsheet about the new unit you'd like to put on file. First thing would be to select the type of unit. After that, the manufacturer. Below that, as you see, you can put in system numbers, the location at the residence, serial numbers, model numbers, the install year of the unit if you know it, any filter information, whether it's filter sizes or total amount of filters in the unit, and then lastly, if it was installed by your team or not. This will help as we move forward be able to see exactly what's in the field and what we might be servicing today. I referenced adding equipment, but did you know that you can also edit or mark equipment as no longer in service? If a piece of equipment is already on file, you can select it through the screen and do one of two things. Number one is edit any information here that you see that may be incorrect. Another thing is marking it as out of service. Go to the bottom, click out of service, and hit save. What this will do is give you a nice red warning in the field that this is no longer in service, and the office will ultimately have the decision, do we want to keep that unit around for reference in the future, or do we want to delete it? So just to be clear here, you can add equipment, you can edit equipment, you cannot delete equipment. You can mark it for out of service, which will ultimately lead the office to decide if they'd like to delete it or not back in SWRemote. Moving one more to the right on top of the screen, we get to our history. What SWRemote gives you is a look back at the last 10 calls on location for this client. If you do need history beyond those 10, the office will have a full history if you call in there. There's nothing to edit here. It is simply an overview of the previous jobs. But what's really nice here, guys, is you can see the previous job instructions, the previous work done notes, and any other work suggested notes. I personally like this because you can keep your suggestions uniform, regardless if it was you or another tech out here 12 months ago. Moving over to the last button on the right, you'll see Documents. If your office administrator has a Dropbox account connected to SWRemote 21, You'll be able to access and pull up any files from those folders back in the office through here. If you do not have this or are not sure, have your office administrator reach out to SWRemote to begin the setup process. The other tab you'll see on this screen says Forms. If your office is using our legacy Forms application through SWRemote, you'll be able to access any forms that have been completed on this client's profile in the past. Another benefit of having a Dropbox account connected to SWRemote back in the office is you'll have an extra button in your menu called Photos. Selecting that will bring up all photos from the past that have been taken on this customer's account through SWRemote. However, what you can also do here is take new photos while you're in the field today. In order to do that, you'd hit Take a Photo. Remember, there is a case on my device. It will pull up your camera. You can take a photo and save it to use on the account. Doing so will allow any other techs in the future to access these photos, the office to access these photos, and they can, even if they need to, send them from the office to the client. Remember, photos are only an option if your admin in SWRemote has a Dropbox account connected to both SuccessWare and SWRemote. Now that we've taken a walk through our menu, we can officially start our call. One thing to note before we get into the call is everything that you've previously seen in the menu will be available throughout the entirety of the call. So just because I started with it up front doesn't necessarily mean that's going to be your first stop every time you open up SWRemote. It will be there whenever you need it. When we log into our call, the first step we arrive on is called Dispatch. The easiest way to explain this is, okay, where am I going? You're going to take a few minutes on this step to just gather your information, figure out where you're heading, and once you're ready to leave, we're going to use the bottom right arrow to dispatch ourselves. Moving forward with the bottom right arrow will bring us to our second step, En route. As you could probably guess, this is you driving to the location. One thing I'd like to point out here is in the top left next to your menu, your time card will automatically update with your dispatch status. While you're on this screen, we give you the customer information, including address, and any directions from the office. Also, if you need to, you can use the navigation piece built right into SWRemote. Selecting navigation at the bottom of the screen, you can select which one you'd like to use, and it will open up a turn-by-turn navigation. One thing to notice here while it loads in is yes, you have left SWRemote at this point. You are officially in your mapping software. So once you're done navigating, once you get to where you're heading, please remember, if you can, to close that map app. It's not the end of the world, but if anything's going to slowly drain your battery throughout the day or your data usage, it's that looking for you for 2 hours at a time when you're in a basement somewhere. Just be aware, if you navigate, close the app when you get to where you're heading. Once we've gotten there and we're ready to arrive, we're going to move forward with the bottom right arrow. Doing so will bring us to our third step, which is called Arrive. If the first step was where am I going, the second step is okay, here I go. This step can be boiled down to, all right, what am I doing? You're going to get your job instructions here. The last time you would have seen them would have been on the first login screen, or had you hit your instructions button in the menu. Another thing to notice here is at the bottom of the screen you can now adjust your expected duration for being on site. It is not something you have to marry yourself to right now. Let's say an hour from now I see that my call is scheduled for an hour, but I'm going to need another hour. I can always come back to this page and update the hours and minutes on the bottom. Doing so will automatically extend or shrink this call on my name back in the dispatch board in SWRemote. So we've arrived. It's time to mark ourselves on site. To do so, move forward with the bottom right arrow. Moving forward and putting us on site will bring us to the invoice screen, which in my humble opinion is the most important part of the whole workflow process. When it comes to adding items to your invoice, there are 3 ways to do it. Of the first 3 that we're going to talk about, the first can be found on the top left of your screen. There is a button that says Scan. Selecting that will turn the camera in your device into a barcode scanner. In order to add items through this function, you'll have to have your office print out a price book, assign barcodes to each line item, probably laminate it, throw it in a binder, and you can carry that bad boy around with you and scan out of it as you see fit. As you can imagine, this was great 10 years ago. Nowadays, it's a little bit of a dinosaur. To the right of that is where most of our users are adding line items to their invoices. You will see a button that says Plus Item. Selecting that will bring you to a screen that says Add Item. And from here, there are 2 different options for adding line items to your invoice. The first is looking at you from the middle of the screen. It is a search bar. Think of this as a Google or a Yahoo search that is specific to your price book. If you know the key word for what you're looking for, if you know the item number or task number for what you're looking for, you can go ahead and plug that in here. The first thing I'm going to look for is a diagnostic. So I'm just going to type in very broadly DIAG. When I hit search up here on the top right, that will query my price book and give me any responses that match my search criteria. So as you see here, I was kind of vague on purpose. It's giving me quite a bit of responses. If I knew exactly what I was looking for, I could plug that in, and of course, it's only going to bring me the one option. What I'd like to do is select a diagnostic. Doing so will bring you into a screen here. It says Edit Invoice Item. This is an opportunity to edit the item before it officially goes onto the invoice to present to the client. Up on the top of the screen, you'll see a series of several gray buttons, the first of which is plus equip. If you'd like to assign this specific line item to existing equipment on file, you select that button and select the equipment that you'd like to tie this to. As you can probably guess, it's the same thing to the right. Plus agree will allow you to attach this specific line item to an agreement on file. And the last on the right, plus war, is very similar, but if you need to attach it to a warranty on file. Moving down the screen, you'll see the item number and type are non-editable. The logic behind that is if we get our hands on this item and change everything below it, at least our office has a fighting chance to know what it started as before we mutated it, so to speak. Below that, you'll see your description. That is how this line item is going to show up on the invoice for the client. You probably will not have to edit this frequently, if at all. However, one thing I like to bring up in my trainings is, let's say, for example, you have a line item in your book that's called miscellaneous, and it covers 150 things that would be a pain to create their own line items for. Maybe in that scenario, you change miscellaneous to something more appropriate to what's going on. Of note here, when we talk about editing, is anything you edit through this screen is just for today's invoice. You are not back in your book making changes. The next time you or any other coworker goes to look for this item, it will show up in your book as expected. Below the description, you'll see the department. That will default to whatever department the call is initially assigned under. However, if you see that this is a residential call and you're very obviously standing on top of a target, you might want to change that to commercial. Below that, the price itself can be edited. And below that, the quantity, or how many are we adding to the invoice, can also be changed. Lastly, on the bottom of the screen, you'll see a series of checkboxes that are controlled by your price book. These are not things you'll have to play with too frequently. However, while we're here, I'd like to point out the discountable button. This is a button that is probably going to come checked on most of your line items. It does not mean that this line item is getting a discount. What it means is if we wish to apply a discount, something I'll show you here soon, it will hit this item specifically. So yes, technically you can have discountable and non-discountable on the same invoice, and when it comes to applying a discount, it will only take into consideration the items that are checked as discountable while applying that discount. The last thing we want to do to get this on our invoice is up in the top right corner, hit the save button. Hitting the save button will throw that item onto your invoice and bring you back to your search. So if you need to continue to add items to your invoice, you can continue searching, selecting, and editing as you see fit. However, I referenced there's 3 ways to add items to your invoice, and the third is also found on this page. Instead of using the search bar in the middle of your screen, there is a button up in the top right that says Catalog. Selecting that will break your book down into categories and sections, wherein you can walk your way through the book to get to the appropriate line item to add. For example, I'm looking at my tasks. All right, I want to go into my straightforward pricing. Doing so will present me with all my levels. Let's add a level 2 task. Hitting that will open up all my level 2s in my book. I can then select the appropriate line item, edit it if I need to, or if I'm good to go, hit save, and again, bring me back to my catalog. So essentially, there are 3 ways to add items to your invoice. You can scan, you can search, or you can use the catalog function. Once we're done searching and adding items to our invoice, we can go ahead and hit close on the top left of our screen. That will bring us back to our search. If we're done here, again, simply hit close. Doing so will bring us back to our invoice. From here, you can also do a couple more things before you have the client agree for the job. To the right of that plus item button, there is a button that says plus agree. Selecting that will bring us into an area where we can sell or renew an existing agreement. If you are going to sell a new agreement, simply select from the type dropdown at the top of your screen the appropriate agreement you would like to add. If you would like to renew an existing agreement, on the top right of your screen you'll see a renewal button. If you select that, it will bring you back into your agreement history with the client, and from here you can select the specific agreement you'd like to renew. Hit save, and you will see on your invoice now the item type is going to be an agreement deposit with however much money expected on that first day of the agreement. To the right of that we have a button that says plus visit. If you find yourself out in the field working with an agreement client that maybe A, today's call wasn't specifically about their agreement, or B, the office forgot to attach the agreement visit to today's call, this is where you can clean that up. So really what I'm saying is there's two scenarios here. Number one is you get out in front of one of those agreement visits. Let's say it's not until next month, but you have the time and the blessing from the office to go ahead and take care of it today. In that case, you're going to come in here and select that agreement visit has been completed with today's call. What that will do is it'll mark that call as completed, and it'll stop the office from trying to schedule something a month from now that you completed ahead of schedule. The other option here, again, is if they set up your call but forgot to attach the visit, just remember to come in here to make sure that you've marked that agreement visit has been completed with today's call. The last button you'll see here in the top right is the discount button. This is when those checkboxes for discountable come into play. If we wish to apply a discount to our invoice, we can simply press that button up in the top right. And now we give you a couple options depending on your scenario. What makes your discounting easy for you? The first thing you'll see is a dollar amount. You can just throw in a whole number. So for example, $20 off today. To the right of that, you'll see a percent. Now this percent will be of the discountable items on your invoice. So let's just say 10% off. And then lastly, you have your types. So if you select your type, there'll be a drop down here. And these types are pre-set up for you by your office back in SWRe. Selecting the drop down will give me all my different types, and then I can apply that discount. Saving that discount will show a number 1 up in the top right to show you that yes, a discount has been applied to this invoice. Before we move forward to present to the client, there's one more thing I want to talk about here, and that is the ability to delete your items from your invoice. The red X's on the right side of the screen are, of course, how you're going to do that. However, give me one moment to explain what you can do from here. So let's say, for example, this contactor they don't want. If I hit the red X here, it'll pop up with a delete option. The blue yes is poof, it's gone. I don't care about it. I never cared about it. Maybe I put it there by mistake. It's just not something I'm worried about moving forward. The no button we put there, just because of where the screen sets up, your thumb may hit one of these red X's. We want to give you a quick out, so to speak. Now the third option here, the orange option, is what I'd really like to focus on. If you're a technician who likes to give the client a couple different options, keep track of what they do not want, you can have it done for you automatically through deleting it with this orange option. This orange button says add to declined work. Deleting with the orange option will automatically add this line item to your work suggested notes for you. Once we're confident that our invoice is ready to be presented to the client, we are going to move forward with the bottom right arrow. Moving forward will bring us into our first presentable version of the invoice for the client. On this screen, you'll see your company logo up in the top left. Below that will be your company information, pulled directly from SWRe. Below that will be the customer information. And to the right, you'll have your job overview information. As we move down, you'll see anything that was declined from the invoice under work suggested, your line items, any legalese, or as we call them, content blocks for the customer review before they sign. When they're ready to sign, have them click the bottom right button, click accept and sign, and get their signature. That signature does two things for you. Number 1, I agree for you to do the work. Number 2, I agree to pay you the amount on this invoice. Getting that signature and moving forward will move you forward to the pay. So as you can probably see here, we've done a massive time hop from that first signature to closing up the call. So what I'd like to do now is take a moment to show you what you can do while you're actually completing the job. If you go up to the top left and select your menu again, you'll see underneath your customer tab there is a notes button. For those of you who've been paying attention, you would have realized that this notes button was grayed out until our invoice existed. Now that we have our invoice here and accepted, we can go ahead and add notes that we've been doing on the job. Click on your Notes tab, and that will bring up a screen here with Work Done and Work Suggested located at the top right. There are 3 ways to add notes, and before we get into them, I want to stress to you that these notes are customer facing. These notes will show up on the invoice, and if you recall from the history, they'll also be there for any other employee you work with looking back at this call in the future. When it comes to adding notes, again, there are 3 ways. The first way is simply pressing into the box and typing out your note. Pretty straightforward here. One thing that I like to always come back to is that as these are customer facing, spelling, grammar, and context, of course, are pretty important here. The second option, I'm going to come to Work Suggested to show you, is speaking to type. Recommend the client signs up for an annual maintenance agreement. Anywhere, and I mean absolutely anywhere in the app where you can use the keyboard, you can also speak to type. Very handy for those of you out there that are crawling around with your hands filthy all day. Just press the microphone and you can speak away. The last way to enter notes comes in the form of a drop down at the bottom of both Work Done and Work Suggested. Your admins have the ability to add notes for you to use in the field. Consider these notes the ones that are a pain in the butt, the ones that you do frequently, the ones that are 3 paragraphs long and you don't want to type anymore. Your admin can preload those and you can select them at the bottom of your screen with this drop down. So for example, today, let's say I recommend they get their ducts cleaned. Instead of having to type this out every time I recommend it, I can hit that button and it'll pop right in. For example, Work Done. Let's say today I did a precision tune-up. Select it, hit the plus button, and there it is. So really when it comes to notes, there are a couple things to remember. Number 1, they open up as soon as your invoice is created. Number 2, they go to the client. So these are client facing. Number 3, if your admins want to be your best friend, they can go ahead and load these in ahead of time for you to select in the field. Once you're comfortable with your notes and ready to present them to the client, remember to hit the back button up on the top left of the screen to save your notes. Another thing we can do now that the job's in progress is add the parts used. In your menu, it would have been grayed out prior, just like the notes button. There is a button for parts. It looks like a little toolbox. Selecting that will bring up any items from your invoice that are able to have parts assigned to it. The parts you assign here are not going on the invoice itself. Consider this the backside of the invoice, where you keep track of what was used off your truck during today's call. Essentially, it's to help you get restocked and do any parts requisitions back in the office. To add a part, press the parts button there on the left, then select the line item that you'd like to add a part to. Selecting that button will bring you into a screen with the line item across the top and the ability to add or scan just like you did while you were building your invoice. One thing to note here is you're only searching through your parts. So if you click Add, you can search for a specific part. So I'm just going to search for a capacitor. Hitting the search button will pull up anything in my parts book, and I can simply click on it and save it to the line item. So again, what's important here is the customer's not being charged for these parts. These are parts that are going to the backside of the invoice to let the office know or the warehouse know what you used today during this call. Once we've added our parts and any notes, we can go ahead and get ready to close up the call. And the first step to do that is to accept payment. On my screen, you'll see at the top that there is a balance on this account. If the client would wish to include it today, I can hit the checkbox and it will apply that balance to my payment amount down there at the bottom. If this client also had a deposit on file, you would see a drop down there with any available deposits to add to the call as well. As for taking payment, we have all the usual options you'd expect to see. If you're going to take a check today, you're going to select the check button here and drill down just a little bit further on your screen. When taking a check in the field, SWRe is going to ask you for 2 things. Number 1 is the check number, which is normally a 1 to 4 digit number. And number 2 is the name of the person signing the check. You are still going to take the physical check with you, but when you push through with this check payment, the information will be waiting in the office for them to juxtapose with the check you bring and post. When it comes to taking credit card payments, we do have a couple different options. If you'd like to run it through us, you can use PayFlow or WePay and connect directly through our app. Doing so will allow your technicians to hit this swipe button and to take a payment right in the field, or If you don't have a swiper, if it's lost, broken, stolen, or you never had one, you can also plug in the information by hand through the keyboard here at the bottom. If you're taking a credit card payment through another app, whether it be Payzor, Square, Clover, as long as that payment app is set up in Other, which I'll show you now, you can go ahead and go to that app, run your transaction as you normally would, come back in here, select Other, give us the payment method, and then a reference number. Now, what I normally recommend for a reference number are one of two things. Ideally, through that other app, if it gives you an authorization number, that is perfect. Put that in. On the other hand, if it doesn't go to you, maybe it only goes to the client or the admin on your account. What I recommend in those scenarios is giving us the last four of the credit card. Again, just an easy way to back up your payment when it comes to juxtaposing those together back in the office. Underneath Other is going to be everything else you accept for payment under the sun outside of check and credit card. You'll see here for my payment method, I have a drop down with a couple other options. Depending on what you select here, you are always going to have to provide a reference number. Quick tip here, and this may be more for the admins who are watching this video. Payment method has to be something. What it is totally up to you. So if you have an idea of what you'd like to represent as a reference number for each type of payment, make sure your team knows. If you do not have a formal reference number system, what I recommend always is just give information here that helps back up your payment method. That's really all it is just backup for yourself and for the customer record onto their invoice. The last option here is none. And there are a variety of reasons why we may not take a penny today. But in that case, if we're leaving without any money today, you're going to hit none. Notice that your payment amount zeroes out, and your total due will now become a balance on the account for the office to handle as they see fit. What I'd like to do today is take a check, because there's one more thing I'd like to show you on this screen. In the event that they're taking a check and you move forward, you have, as an admin, or if you're watching as a tech, your admin can put in a check policy for your company. This is 100% optional, 100% customizable. So really the message that displays here is entirely up to you. Once we have payment, we know the job's done, we're going to get to our final version of the invoice, which is the approve screen. Here we are going to get a signature that again does two things for us. Number one, I am a happy client. Number two, I have paid you. So think of this as signing off on the work being approved and finished. As you scroll down, I'll just point out some of the new things we've added here. Any work suggested or work done notes that we've added during the call. And then underneath your line items there, you're going to see the payment details for the customer record. So depending on their method, the correlating information will show up in columns underneath that. So you see for here, I have my check, so it's presenting the number and the name of the person who signed for the check. As we scroll down, you'll see your initial signature. And again, you're going to get the signature now that says, thank you, and I've paid you. So go ahead and have them click approve, sign again, and save and continue. Once we continue past our signature, we are almost done with our call. The last thing we should do is do our job debrief. There does appear to be a lot going on this screen. However, what I really want you to focus on is the top box of opportunities. If my company sells an agreement and this customer doesn't have one, guess what? That's an opportunity. And I want to preface this by saying this is even if you didn't speak to the client about this opportunity. We want the data. As far as the conversation, it's obviously great if you did, but if not, that's okay. We just want to make sure we know there's an opportunity there on this account. Below that, you'll see an option for lead generated. If you click on that, it drills you down a little bit here. The first thing it'll present to you is an opportunity code. An opportunity code in SUCCESSWRE is essentially what type of lead. So for example, their ductwork could use some fixing. Below that, if you're following up yourself or if you have a comfort advisor that follows up, you can select a preferred date. So I'm going to say next week. Below that, you'll see a checkbox for customer notified. This is, if I check it, it means is the customer aware that we're going to be following up about their ductwork on the 17th. On the other hand, if that's not checked, the person who's following up is going to treat this more as a cold call scenario where the customer isn't aware that we're going to be following up with them about their ductwork. The last thing you see here is the ability to add a follow-up note. Office folks, these are lead notes. texts, these do not go to the client. These are on your side only. What I normally see this used for is any other leads. So if we have multiple leads, we can keep them listed here, or any other strategic information that will help with this initial lead that we're putting in. As we scroll down below that, if there was a warranty opportunity, check it. If you sold a warranty today, you can say, yes, I did, and you can say for how much and for how long. Replacement opportunity, do they have older broken equipment? If so, did you sell it today? And if you say you did, for how much? So really, once you get used to doing this, it should take about 1 to 2 minutes, and it becomes extremely helpful when it comes to producing a new churn for your sales team in the office. As we scroll down the screen, I just want to point out that everything else should be auto-filled based on the call, but you can also select your call type if you would like to. Was this call under warranty? Was it completely under contract? Was it non-contract? Or was it a callback? Now I know this is a dirty word for most of you, but if you say it was a callback, you can go in and actually select from the history the job that you're returning for. Once you're done with this screen, we're going to move forward and get ready to close out our call. Now that we're on our last screen here, notice it says complete up in the top right. I would like to hit the 10-8 button in the center of your screen. Doing so will send an alert to anyone in the office with the dispatch board open that your call needs attention. What most of our clients use this for is to let the dispatch know that, hey, it's me. I'm about 5-10 minutes out from finishing up my current call. If you can get my next one ready to go, I'd appreciate it. Think of it as a passive way to let the office know that you're almost done with your call. That way you don't have to tie up the lines calling them and getting a rundown of where you're going next. The last thing we're going to do on this page is hit send receipt up in the top left. Doing so will pop up the email that's associated with this account. Confirm with the customer that's correct, and if so, you can just hit send. If this email is blank, incorrect, outdated, you can pop in a new email here and hit send and update on the right. What that will do is get the customer, of course, what they need, but it will also update SWRe21 moving forward with their appropriate email. Once we are done with our assignment, we're going to go down to the bottom right and hit complete. Now, in a perfect world, which this video, of course, is, we are done. However, if you're done for the day, but you're not ready for the call to be posted, here in the complete screen, you can actually set a status outside of complete moving forward with this call. The one that we all see quite frequently is holding for a part. Selecting this will let me move forward with my day, but when the part comes in, they can redrag that call back on the dispatch board to the appropriate tech at the appropriate time. As you see here, there are several other statuses you can use. For today, I'm going to use complete. Completing a call will bring us to this screen. If you have another call ready to go, it'll ask if you're ready to dispatch. If you are ready to dispatch, you say yes, and you continue on with what we just did through this call. If you are not ready to dispatch, or as you see on my screen, you don't have another call, it'll ask you to update your time card. One thing to note here is your time card is automatic during a call, but in between, you can update it as frequently as you need to by hitting your time card up on the top left next to your menu. So for example, I'm done with my call, I'm gonna go take a lunch. I set my status and hit save. Now you'll notice up in the top left of my screen that I have a lunch time card punch going until I'm done with lunch. At this point, if I were to get another call and select it, it will take over my time card. However, let's say I get to the end of lunch and I'm not ready or I don't have another call, I can actually punch it again and set a new status. So really, guys, as long as you're in a call, your time card is automatic. If you're outside of a call, you can always press the button up in the top left to update your time card throughout the entirety of the day, including the end of day punch out. So you finished your call. Congratulations. One more thing I'd like to add is during your call or in between your calls, if you ever need help from us, there's a very quick and easy way to get it. Open up your menu on the top left, and towards the very bottom, you'll see a support icon with a question mark. So everything went great on that call. We finished it up. We punched our time card, and everything's great. But let's say you need some help in the middle of a call or in between calls. I'd like to show you a very quick and efficient way to get a hold of us. If you open up your menu in the top left, at the bottom of your menu, you will see the word support with a question mark icon. Selecting this button will give you two different avenues on how to get help from us. Number one would be to start a new conversation. Doing so will start a live conversation with our team here in Buffalo, and they'll be able to assist you in any problems you may be having with your device. Below that, you can see that you can find an answer for yourself. Here at PointMan, we pride ourselves on having a lot of thorough documentation about our products. If you're an independent learner or for some reason just don't want to talk to us, you can find your own answers by looking through our articles in the search bar here. The very last thing I want to talk about, and it's important now that we've been updating pretty frequently, is to please remember to log out at the end of the day. To log out, hit the log out button on the bottom left of your menu and hit yes. Now in the morning when you log back in, you'll be able to get any changes that the office may have put through, and it's just a nice way to make sure that you're staying up to date with everything back in SuccessWare 21. Again, thank you for your time today. If you have any questions whatsoever, do not be a stranger. Feel free to reach out to us at any point. We're always here to help you. I hope you have a wonderful day.